What's up, guys? Cedric here from Team BBN, coming to you today with a premium bluish flame deck. Well, you go Paladin lovers. This is basically just the V Series bluish flame deck with a G zone, basically. So the whole purpose of this deck is to just constantly superior call and power up as much as possible. And I love this deck because it's basically just automatic and can be very aggressive on just turn 2. So let's get started. First off, we're gonna start with 4 copies of our main unit, Bluish Flame Liberator Prominence Core. He is the main unit of the deck, and what he does is on Vanguard Circle, you counter blast 1, retire 1 in your rear guard. You look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and you choose up to 2 units from among them and call them to rear guard. But if you have Bluish Flame Liberator Percival in your soul, you can actually call all 4 instead if you want to. And what's very good is that what's good about it is that just by counterblocking and sacrificing a unit, you could basically kind of, in a sense, basically build up your board as much as basically as much as possible. And the more units you call, the more skills that can go off. Especially if you say you call what's the unit then drain, then you can already start kind of drawing after that and calling more units on top of it. The secondary skill is when one of your rear guards is placed on the rear guard, both that unit and Prominence Core get 3,000. And then you have Oath Liberator Agglavail. One of the units that was called was Agglavail. Then Prominence Core gets +1 crit. What's good about the secondary skill is mainly because of the first skill. So because the secondary effect is not once per turn, when you use Prominent Core's first effect and you call more than 1 unit, essentially Prominence Core is going up every time. So if you call, say you have Percival in the soul and Prominence Core is your Vanguard, when you use Prominence Core's ability while Percival's in the soul and you decide to call all 4 units, you're essentially giving Prominence Core plus 12k. Just like that. And then you were able to call more units on top. But even if you just call a unit from hand, just 1, you still gain plus power. Next, we have 3 copies of Bluish Flame Liberator Percival. So if you play it in V Premium, he's at 1 because of the ban list. But if you play him in for Premium, and I say this lightly, Premium, because this is how you get away with it, you can play more than 1 copy. The reason why, for those of you who don't know, Percival got put to 1 because they decided to take off the choice restriction with Gurgrit, and plus Percival is basically super generic in any deck. And what he does is Vanguard skill, while he's on the Vanguard, all your units on additional rear guard circle get plus 5k. And then Vanguard rear guard circle, when placed, if your Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, you counterblast 1, discard a card. You automatically get an Excel marker. You draw a card. And then you search your deck or your drop for Oath Liberator, Agglavail, and Call to rear guard. What's good about this skill is that, say if you were doing a budget deck and you have Percival as your main grade 3, you can ride into Percival. You get Excel marker just from riding. Then you activate the skill, get another Excel marker. And then you just, essentially you get 2 markers, all of that. So basically you can ride the core, call Percival to rear guard, use Percival's skill. So now you already have 2 Excel markers on your first grade 3 ride. So that's one of the main reasons why you play this card. It's just an extender. And also for all you Go Paladin lovers who know, there is a G unit that you could stride with on turn 1 if you go first, where normally you wouldn't be able to stride on first turn, but you have the Unite ability, which is basically if you call 2 more units that turn, you just get to stride the unit for free, basically. Then we play 2 copies of Full Cavalier Dragon. This is actually really good. It's a budget unit, but it's also good because on Vanguard Rigor Circle, just Soul Blasting 1, you look at the top card of your deck and you call it, and then your Vanguard gets plus 5k. What's good about this essentially is that there have been times when I had to ride Cavalier Dragon instead of going to Percival Prominence Court. I haven't seen him. So, and you get the XL market, then you just, for one Soul Blast, you call. What's the main reason I played this, besides the superior calling, is mainly because the deck is kind of somewhat counterblast reliant, so just being able to have another unit to kind of call you and not have to worry about counterblasting is actually pretty good. So that's pretty much all grade 3s. For grade 2s, we play 4 copies of Liberator Aglavale, and what he does is, when placed on Vanguard Circle, you counterblast 1, look at top 3, and then you call 1, and then put the rest at the bottom of the deck. So essentially, he's kind of like, for me personally, I prefer not to ride him as Vanguard, but because he has that skill, it's okay to do so. But 9 times out of 10, you wouldn't be running it as your Vanguard. You would mainly play as your rear guard off of Percival, or any unit that lets you call it from deck or hand. And then its other ability is, on rear guard circle, when it attacks, you choose one of your other rear guards and put it to soul, and then Aglavale gets plus 10k to end the battle. And at the end of that battle, it bounces back to your hand. What's essentially good about that ability is that you give it the extra power, and then you kind of say you already attack with one unit. Aglavale can take that unit, put it into soul, so now you have a space to call a unit. And also, you essentially soul charging, and not only that, Aglavale bounces back to hand, so that way you can call again next turn. And also prevents your opponent from like trying to get rid of it. Say like if they want to bind it or they want to retire it, they can't essentially touch it because now it's in your hand. Unless you do Batama, then you're probably gonna be forced to discard it. Then we play 4 copies of. Let's fix that. The Liberator Royalty Fallon, and this is the main grade 2 I prefer to see. The grade 2 I prefer to see as my Vanguard, because on Rigor during your turn, if a Rigor was called from deck, plus 5k, it continues plus 5k. But essentially, you care more about the Vanguard Rigor ability, which is when the attack hits the Vanguard, you have the option of looking at the top card of your deck and you may call it. So what makes Fallon really good in this deck is that it's essentially a OTT card, because it baits your opponent out. So it's like either waste a card in your hand or take the hit, and then I can look at the top card and call it and get an additional attack. But what's also good about this is that, say that this was your rear guard, and then you have a Vanguard, and they let Fallon hit. Because Fallon's ability to let you look at the top card of your deck, you essentially can check to see if it's a trigger, and you just leave it on top if you want to. Which is really good, because if you playing, like it basically lets you see like you over trigger any of your triggers early on if you want. Then I played 2 copies of Knight of Strong Favors, Berengaria. I only played 3. You don't really need to play 4. It's unnecessary. And basically what it does is, when placed by a card by the effect of the ability, I get before one of the effects, which is I counterblast 1 and soul charge, or I soul blast 1 and counter charge. It's not bad. It's more like you have to pay a cost to do in order to kind of set yourself for the opposite cost. Essentially, you don't really see this as much. For me personally, I barely get off its effect from Superior Calling, because 9 times out of 10 it's always in my hand. So honestly, once we get the new Gold Paladin support, that's essentially gonna be taken out most likely because there's no need for it. You could, if you want to, replace with Kahayden, which is the grade 2, that 9K that says you when called you counterblast one, or you either discard that or you discard a card and then you look at top 3 and superior call one. So it's more up to preference for that last spot. Then I play 4 copies of Dawning Knight Gobodoc. This is essentially just your grade 3 searcher, essentially, and then wait if you have what is it? If you called it one of your rear guard, 2 or more units, it gets plus 5K. So essentially, it's always gonna be at 13K basically because you're gonna be calling at least 2 units each turn. Essentially. Then we played 3 copies of Joseph. Joseph is very good. You want to see this as your Vanguard, as your grade 1 Vanguard ride for turn. Mainly because when you go into your grade 2 for turn, when it's voted upon, you look at the top card of your deck and then you call it. Which is pretty good because you can start a superior call chain reaction if you lucky. And then secondary effect is when placed on rear guard from deck, you Soul Blast one counter charge. Then you can essentially Soul Blast again and draw. The only downside is that essentially if you want both effects to go off, you're essentially wasting 2 Soul Blasts, which is not really good. But if you build up your soul enough, then it's fine. But normally, I just do the Soul Blast to the Clown Charge if I want to. But honestly, I would prefer at least a discard or at least like a Counter Blast to draw instead of wasting another Soul Blast. Mainly because you have Cavalier Dragon, who's solely gonna be taking care of the Soul Blasting. Then we play 3 copies of Dindrain. Dindrain's basically it's kind of like standard in any Gold Paladin deck. When called by an ability, you Soul Blast 1, and you can either draw a card or you can counter charge and plus power. So depending on the state of the game, you kind of prefer the power. But normally early on though, as you set up your board, I personally prefer to draw the card so I can see my stuff early on. Then this card is the Herd Archer Biscot. This is actually a really good unit, mainly because for Counterblast and Soul Blast, you look at top 3 and you call one to rear guard, put the rest at the bottom. I actually have used this card every single time I played, and it screws over my opponent because say you've already used your other units' abilities as once per turns. This essentially lets you call more units. So that's pretty much for the grade 1s. For the standard trigger lineup, I personally do 4 draw PGs. I want to be able to see my cards early on, draw as much as possible. The 4 heals, and because we're being really aggressive, I play 8 crit. So essentially, if you want, you could play fronts. If you care more about power instead of being like wanting to like kind of one shot them, you can play the fronts to get more power to be more aggressive and hit them. I play crits because I want to basically kill them as early as possible. And then for a starter, I just play the Spring Breeze Messenger. I prefer that as my starter for this deck. Now for the G Zone, kind of standard. The one Ultima, if you're not playing, since I'm not playing the Overtrigger, I play Ultima. Ultima, it's debatable card. You don't really need to play for this build, but I essentially keep it there in my deck just in case if I want to really kill it, if I'm trying to kill them. We played the one Progenitor Dragon. So essentially, you don't really need the Progenitor Dragon. So the Ultima you will care more about over the Progenitor Dragon because the Progenitor Dragon, it's when placed, you counterblast one, Soul Blast one, and it basically you call until all your units are filled up, and then you draw 3. The only downside of that Progenitor Dragon is that it doesn't let you. It doesn't say call as many as you like. It says you have to call as much as possible. So that's the only downside because you wait. But you mainly essentially it's not bad because you can call what you can, then you draw to get a little bit of replenishment, and then you kind of have for the rest of the game free strides. I played 2 copies of the Golden Dragon. Where are you again? Grand Bell Dragon. You only need 2 of this. Basically, what it does is when it attacks, you take 2 of your rear guards, and well, up to 2 rear guards, put them at the bottom, and then you basically look at top 4 and Superior call 2, and if you call 2 or more, 2 of the, at least 2, the dragon gets plus a crit. Essentially, what you do with this is that if you have your Excel markers on the field, you swim with 2 of your frontline units first. Then you swim with the dragon, take those 2 units that already attack, put them at the bottom, and then call to those circles that are open now. So basically, this is going to provide you the multi-attack that you want to see. Then we played 2 copies of Golden Dragon, Glorious Reigning Dragon. Like I said, you only need 2 of this. You rarely use it, but so far using this deck, I only use this card once and once only, and that was against my friend Mr. Budget, and he essentially hated me for doing that to him, and I had no regrets for it. So basically, when the dragon attacks, you count +1, turn copy of it face up, and then you look at top 7, and then you search, and basically you can call the same number of units up to the number of cards face up in your G zone. And if you call at least like 3 or more units, you counter charge and soul charge 1. What's good about this is that if you want, you can have this be your finisher. Essentially, if your opponent's not hitting the triggers, you essentially will call more units, and essentially can have more power, and just run them over with it. So basically, that's why mainly you play cards like you want to turn cards face up. That's why you like Gambit Dragon. You can turn cards face up. Glorious Dragon turns up. We played 4 copies of Master Soldier of the first Gurgurt Helios. I play 4 mainly because of the fact it just turns itself. You can turn a card face up, and basically if you activation Unite, if you call 2 or more units this turn, you turn a face up card face up. Well, you turn a copy of him face up, and then it just gets +1 drive. So normally, most people probably wouldn't play it. I agree. It doesn't seem that special, but you basically turn a card face up, and then you get 4 drive checks, which is pretty good. So essentially, if say you went to this first turn stride, you essentially have already started turning cards up. So now, basically, if you don't really have any other board state, that's fine because you can just do the 4 drives. And then other ability is Generation Break 3. For every face up, each of your this unit gets +5k for each of your rear guards, and then your opponent can't call grade 1 or greater units. So essentially, if 9 times out of 10, if your opponent's playing the overdressed grade 1 PGs, or like the G era grade 1 PGs, this will essentially stop it. But 9 times out of 10, but honestly, I only play this card because I want to be able to get my generation breaks early on and just get the +1 drive. Then I played 2 copies of the Holy Sword of Heavenly Law Gurgurt. As you only need 2 of this card, really. This card is optional, but now that we got the new strides from the premium collection, you can basically take this out and replace it with the new Gold Paladin unit. And basically what it does is, on activation, you counterblast one to turn a copy of it face up, and then end up getting the Unite ability, whereas you call 2, like I said, you call 2 more units, and then basically when it attacks, you basically look at the top 7 cards of your deck, and you call one of the units among them to the rear guard, and then you shuffle, and then basically continuous all your units get plus 2k for every Gurgwit. Every unit with Gurgwit in its name face up in your G zone. So essentially, that's another reason why you play the Helios, because you're turning up your units face up. So essentially, if you go to it twice, back to back, you already have 4 Gurgwits face up. So then when you go into the Heavenly Law, and then you use the ability to turn a copy of it face up, you essentially have 5 units with Gurgwits in your G zone. So that's all your units will basically get plus 10k. And then the most standard of all Gold Paladin, we play these Spear Cross Dragon. This is like basic Gold Paladin 101. You in premium, you only play it mainly because first turn strike. If you go first, you potentially can strike into this while your opponent's at grade 2 and start to run them down as much as possible. Because basically if you call 2 or more units on your turn, you counterblast to discard a card and you just stride. And then you can basically just Soul Blast 1, turn card face up, look at top 5, and you call 2 cards from among them. Which is essentially why we play Prominence Core and then Percival and the Cavalier Dragon. Because you basically go right into them, then you start to call at least 2 units, and then you can just stride into it. Just like that. And then for G Guardian, I play 4 copies of Slay Me Flare. The G Guardian I'm most likely will change. But it's mainly up to preference with this deck. This deck I came in like 3rd place in premium format with this. And honestly, the deck itself, there's nothing wrong with it. But I am gonna tweak it though, because because now we got the new Liberate, and then now we're gonna have more ways to call, and now we're gonna have more superior riding, which is very good. Which is like something I actually would really love to see. And that's pretty much for the deck profile, guys. Comment, like, and subscribe. If you have any questions or any suggestions you want to give me for my Gold Paladin deck, let me know in the comments. Alright, guys, thanks for tuning in. Peace.